Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Here we are starting a new college semester up, and invariably the internet themselves, I'm sure, gets inundated with a bunch of comments and questions from people facing this particular topic all the time. And in doing research for this, I realized that this particular topic is super saturated when it comes to just not only engineering itself, but just when it comes to college and the general advice people can give on this subject. This video itself may seem very generic, but I can assure you some of the parts that I came up with on my list are probably something you've been hearing for the very first time. This is both a combination of what I faced in school and it's also a combination of other viewpoints that other people share with me as well. I could go into depth about this, especially when it comes to this particular thing as a general advice I can give to budding engineers or people who are about to go engineering school, or probably people who have been there for a year or two already. This is extremely applicable, but again, as far as how far I can go into this subject, I have to learn to try and kind of subdue myself when it comes to that. Aren't you excited? You know, other than being extremely frantic that you're watching this at 3 a.m. worried about the test tomorrow? I'm sure you are. Number 1, gather your own research about classes. This particularly applies at the orientation level, especially if you're a freshman who's about to go into college or go into engineering school specifically. Usually when it comes to the general orientation process with colleges, if you're under a specific discipline, whether it's like engineering or accounting or whatever, you go to that specific department or wherever they want you to do orientation, and usually there's like either specific instructors from those departments or other people along those lines that help you choose classes. And often what I ran into is that professors themselves will essentially try to schedule classes on your behalf without really taking into regard whether you can handle that workload at that particular time. So I had an instance where one of the instructors tried to sign up one student for a semester that included like Calculus 2, differential equations, heat transfer, fluid dynamics, and statics. I mean, that may be doable for some people, but maybe not for others. I mean, that can be a pretty hectic workload for people who are having to deal with nothing but math and science that entire semester. And I don't know if it varies from university to university, but they have most will have a curriculum outline for you. And let's assume you're some student who came into college with no credits to begin with. You're starting from basic scratch and you're on a 4-year plan. Usually they'll integrate your core classes, things like your English and your history and your humanities classes, and they'll integrate it with your math and engineering classes all side by side, and they'll mix it up a little bit. And I saw usually on the curriculum checklist for some people, like as a senior, they'll take like their senior design class, maybe their second heat transfer class, and a couple other electives to fill that out, but they may like throw in a random, American government somewhere in there just to mix things up. Some people I'm sure can handle it. A lot of y'all are probably yelling at the screen like, oh, it's so doable. But for us mere mortals, we may have to take a different approach as far as to come to classes. Again, research your classes, figure out which ones are the hardest ones, figure out the ones that you think you can handle, and try to assign your classes per semester accordingly to the ability that you think you can handle them. Number 2, set a schedule and stick to it. As cheesy as it sounds, I'm sure a lot of people telling you this. I mean, most advisors will tell you if you're enrolled full-time, you need to treat it like a full-time job. But really what I mean by that is, even if you have a class, let's say you don't have a class in the morning, okay? Let's say your first class is not till like 10:30 or something. Owe it to yourself to still wake up at a decent time, whether it's like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, and do stuff in the meantime related to college and engineering. Again, I know it sounds very redundant. I'm sounding like your mother when I'm speaking to you like this, but really, if you get yourself in this routine, it really helps. Like, if you have a class at 10:30, wake up at 7:30, eat breakfast, and then take some time to go over your notes or homework from the next day, or take some time to whip out some of the homework that you already have, whether it's some math problems or review your math problems, or go to the professor's office if they have office hours during those times. Stay busy from a decent time from like 7 to 5 all the time. Obviously take your breaks with lunch and breakfast, but stay committed and stay focused on something engineering and math orientated with your class that is associated with your classes from those hours from 7 to 5 Monday through Friday. Do that all the time. And yeah, granted, especially when you're in the thick of things, you're gonna have to do homework at night and on the weekends and all that stuff. That's very much granted, but it saves you a lot of stress if you eliminate a lot of it during the day, and again, if you set this kind of routine, you'll be so much far used to it as the semesters go by into your college career. Number 3, do something else as a creative outlet. It's very easy to get burned out on all the math, okay? And so I encourage people to try and find something else to kind of do on their site during their free time that's something totally different from any of that. Now again, if you don't get burned out on this stuff, or if you have a deep driving passion for it, you can stick to other extracurricular activities alongside those lines. You know, if you're like part of some type of collegiate decathlon, I don't know what they're called, but or you could be something more subtle like this, you know, like do something like YouTube, or do vlogs or blogging, or participate with the college newspaper, or volunteer for the theater or the English department, whatever it is, something feels different, you know, because if you try to, I highly encourage people to try and mix up their schedule a little bit, so you're not bogged down with all this hard math and science. Let's be honest, it's hard for a lot of people, and you'll get burned out very easily. So try to find something else to kind of put some of your extra free time in, whatever it is, like I said. And it really keeps it keeps you kind of in check. It kind of keeps your sanity going on, because I often find people who, you know, as I said in my first engineering video ever, as far as this channel, you know, you're gonna eventually hit a wall, and you're gonna kind of go through like a quarter life crisis, because it's just gonna feel all too much. But if you have some escape to go to on the side, it really helps you deal with it a lot better. Number 4, carefully evaluate your social interactions. This is slightly tongue-in-cheek, and I'll get into more detail later, but first I want to dispel a myth when it comes to engineers and their social life. Engineers can have a social life, just not as much as any typical person going through any kind of other curriculum would have, you know. But when it comes to evaluating your social interactions, if you're someone who is constantly a social butterfly, you're gonna have to learn to kind of keep that in check. If you're someone who got used to going out and partying every weekend, you don't necessarily need to be doing this all the time, obviously. Don't be surprised if you have to do homework on Friday evening. You know, there are some people who honestly have to do that. Not all the time, but just sometimes, you know. And it's college, and in the same time that you're gonna make friends by virtue of just the things you do. Whether it's just going through your classes and meeting other engineering students, or joining other organizations, being active in that, you're gonna meet other friendships and people. And maybe in high school you were very concerned about your social reputation or whatever. It's time to kind of put that aside and focus on what you need to focus on. Again, I'm not saying your social life's gonna be destroyed, but make wise choices about what you choose to do during the off time. Number 5, do not alienate yourself from the rest of the group. I can't stress enough, depending on whatever college or university you can go to, that once you get into the nitty-gritty of engineering, you're going to be seeing a lot of the same faces and a lot of the same people and a lot of the same professors. I'm not saying that you need to necessarily like be a total and complete shove-off brown-noser or whatever, but allow yourself to try to be friends with people. Don't try to be a lone wolf in a lot of these situations, unless you're just wanting to study or something. But especially engineering, you have a lot of group study work. It's invariably going to happen the more and more you go through your college career, because you'll have labs, you'll have entire classes designated toward design, and you'll be with the same group of people for the whole semester. You know, you have to be able to get close to these people on a certain level, to the point where they can at least tolerate being around you, you know. Because yeah, there's going to be personalities and such that are going to clash, and invariably always happens. But try your best to make yourself a likable person amongst the group, and a very reliable person, a very trustworthy person. Don't try to yes, there are obviously going to be people, especially when it comes to group projects, that are going to be like the lazy ones. It always happens. You definitely don't need to do that, but at the same time, you don't need to try and go into the process thinking that I'm just going to try and tackle this alone, and I'm the one, and I'm here for me, and I'm here to get my A. Obviously, you want to be prioritized with trying to do a good job, but you need to learn to work to other people's strengths and allow them to work to your strengths as well. And at the meantime, by doing this, again, you're going to meet a lot of people and network a lot of people, and these will become some of your closest friends throughout your college career. And so it's important that you try to take time to check yourself, allow yourself to be open to these people and allow them to open up to you, whatever it is, and just, again, don't try to alienate yourself and get through this alone. That's never how college was designed for. It's not how the curriculum is designed for, and especially in the work field, you're going to be working with a lot of people all the times, so it's obviously a wise choice to start now. Number 6, always take time to evaluate your health. Now, I know I'm definitely sounding like your mother here. I totally acknowledge that, but I'm not going to lie, especially going through engineering. It's very easy to take shortcuts when it comes to certain health choices, okay? Because you're so busy doing schoolwork, going to class, maybe doing your job if you're working, whatever it is, or your internship or whatever it is, and you're not making wise decisions as far as your personal health. You know, obviously the stereotype as far as what people happens to their body when you're going through college, you know, the freshman 15, as they say. It's very easy for engineers to really get out of shape because they're really just training nothing but their brains and not their body. You know, especially if you're on campus, this is a good time, as I say, like obviously tuition prices are skyrocketing, and so you might as well take advantage of the services you're paying for. So if there's like a gym on campus, owe it to yourself to go to a nice walk, try to go and work out at least couple of times a week at least, or set a routine. Maybe enroll in a gym class, like a 1-hour credit gym class that you take in the morning. Make that your first thing you do as part of your habit, and then focus on your day. Go running. If you can't do all that, at least diet. Try to restrict yourself as to what you actually eat. And this is kind of a controversial point that I'm about to say. Be careful as the things you do to enhance your performance. And I say this with kind of as a cautionary tale, because I obviously don't speak from experience, but you know, if you're like on things like Adderall, okay, to try and stay focused all the time in school, and you use it all the time, you need to be careful as far as like developing a dependency on something like that, because you won't be able to do your schoolwork unless you have it. You know, it's kind of like, I hate to use this analogy, but let's say you smoke marijuana. There's obviously a lot of people who smoke marijuana would tell you that if you are planning to take a test, for example, and you study the material while high, it's going to come to you naturally, but then the next day, once you sober up and you go and take the test, you forgot everything you studied. You'll have to be high again in order to take the test. It's the same thing with relying on something like Adderall all the time. You don't need to rely on these unhealthy means, honestly, to try and push your way through the curriculum. If you're struggling with something like that, it really just comes down to all it comes down to is just time management at that point, or basically asking for help or trying to do something to line your coursework. Because I'm telling you right now, coffee and green tea are a wonderful thing. Anyway, guys, those are my top 6 tips. Somewhat may think impractical, somewhat plausible, useful tips on how to get through engineering school. Again, doesn't apply to everyone. And as far as talking about more topics about this, or this particular topic, making more videos about this particular topic, it'll vary to a degree as far as to what I actually want to talk about, as far as just giving advice for people going through engineering, people who are in the middle of engineering or thinking of going to engineering. It's going to vary, and probably I'm going to repeat myself a lot when it comes to giving advice all the time. But chances are, it's nice for people to come back for a refresher on this stuff. I know I certainly needed it. Thank God for YouTube. I'm not kidding. Going through college during YouTube's golden years, the years of 2007, 8, and 9. It was a whole different time, man. Anyway, guys, see you soon, and stay tuned for more.